I think we can all agree that kids are pretty dumb. For the most part at least. Not only are they incapable of accomplishing the simplest tasks, but they are also emotionally unstable, which leads to them being scared of things that aren't really scary. Which is what we are going to discuss today, childhood trauma. Most of the fears we had as kids left a significant impact on us, either for the better or the worse. In my case, it led to me being more resistant to actual scary things when growing up, and it awakened my interest for creepypastas and other scary stories and concepts. In other cases, it led to the person being even more scared of scary stuff. But I think most of us look back at those years thinking, I really used to be a little piece of shit. For those who don't know yet, this video is part of a trend that was popular like 3 years ago, where the creator would talk about things that they were scared of as kids. The YouTuber Wendigoon made a video about this recently, talking about the stuff he was afraid of. And look at that, he even challenged me to do my own video. So yeah, here we are. Check him out, he's a very small YouTuber, he has like 1 subscriber, which is me. His content is very cool though. Hey, Scrabbl from the future here. I forgot to mention that those childhood trauma videos were focusing on media that scared them as kids, though I will be covering some things that aren't considered media. And I guess since this is a challenge, I should probably challenge someone else to do it too. And the only person that comes to my mind right now is A-Mart, because he subscribed to me and he does somewhat similar content. So A-Mart, if you're seeing this, do it or I will unsubscribe from your channel. So I'll start with fears that are very common to have as a child, and the further the video progresses, the fears will become more and more obscure and specific to my own experience. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I know, this one is kinda basic, but it was a big deal for me back then, and for most kids, I assume. But this fear would only kick in when I was left alone in the darkness. This ranges from wandering past dark corners in my house to turning the lights off when I went to sleep. Like a lot of kids, I had to sleep with a little nightlight because I always started imagining creatures in the dark, like the silhouette of monsters and people and stuff like that. So what do you do when you suspect a monster in the corner of your room? You hide under your blanket, because that obviously makes you invincible. Also, on a slightly unrelated note, I never left my limbs hanging off the edge of my bed, because, you know, the monsters under my bed would grab them and probably rip them off. Yes, I know, this is a really generic fear for a child, but trust me, it gets better. Don't click off, please! Okay, bear with me on this one. You might think that this one is just the same as the fear of darkness, but actually, this is way worse. Just imagine waking up in the middle of the night, usually thirsty as fuck. You want to turn on the light to go grab some water, but it won't turn on. You're stuck in the darkness with no possibility of escape. Coped with my very bright imagination, this overall experience wasn't great. So that's the point where 8-year-old me starts panicking and screaming for my parents. You might have noticed that a lot of my childhood fears take place at night. Well, you're absolutely correct. I used to be extremely scared of the darkness. So much so that amongst using a nightlight, I had to listen to music to fall asleep. The music gave me a form of comfort and I didn't feel as alone, which made it easier for me to fall asleep. Back then, my mom regularly gave me CDs with a big variety of happy children's songs, which I threw in my small CD player whenever I went to bed. The average duration of one CD was about 1 hour. Whenever the CD reached the end, the CD player would make this weird click noise followed by the noise of the CD spinning its last rounds. And then, complete silence. Now I was truly alone, now that the reassuring sound of the music stopped. This was something that completely freaked me out. So I had this rule that whenever I was still awake and the CD approached its end, I always had to stand up, go to the CD player and restart the CD before it stopped. A lot of kids grow up watching things they aren't supposed to watch. Like if you got your hands on a horror movie, it was a very exciting moment because you know exactly that you shouldn't watch it, and then you do it anyway and you start regretting it. Well, I wasn't one of these kids. I actively avoided violent and scary movies. Like 90% of movies and TV shows I watched were animated. I was really scared of seeing blood. My dad once showed me a movie where some guy got stabbed in his ass or something, and I felt absolutely disgusted after seeing the blood. But since I never really watched these types of movies, I couldn't really be scared of them. I only assumed that they would disturb me. I sometimes used to watch movies on free TV at night, like one time where I watched Back to the Future, and then when it finished, a warning came up for the next movie. There was a huge animated 16 on the screen, and some guy said, "The following movie is not appropriate for people under the age of 16 or something along those lines. And I don't know why, but this warning always scared the shit out of me for some reason. It just came out of nowhere and I didn't even dare to watch a second of the movie. I just immediately turned off the TV whenever this warning came on. I can't make this video without talking about creepypastas. Creepypastas were always meant to be scary, and they definitely scared the shit out of me when I was younger. But now looking back at them, most of them are just really generic, edgy, and overall badly written.
Son, just put down the knife,
said the officer. Liu held up the knife and dropped it to the ground. Where the fuck else would you drop it?
But anyway, one summer day, my buddy came over to my place and we were talking about Pokemon. Standard kid stuff so far. But then he thought it was a good idea to bring up the Lavender Town Syndrome. Basically, he found a YouTube channel about scary Pokemon mysteries and myths and stuff like that. Me, thinking that the world is all cookies and rainbows, asked what the Lavender Town Syndrome was about. And then he told me the story about how there was a piece of music in the early Pokemon copies that drove the kids hearing it insane and forced them into committing suicide. And I was just standing there. Are we talking about the same Pokemon here? When he went back home, I immediately looked up the YouTube channel he showed me and I just fell deeper and deeper into this creepypasta rabbit hole. I learned about more Pokemon creepypasta like this zombie guy who fucking eats you or the ghost Pokemon who committed several war crimes. In the beginning, the creepypastas were all Pokemon, but then I discovered the real bad stuff. Squidward Suicide with this absolutely haunting picture, and then there was Jeff the Killer, Ben Drown, Sonic.exe, and so many more. I remember stumbling upon the SCP Foundation website, and I caught myself questioning if it was a real organization for 1 second. These stories absolutely destroyed me. They kept me awake at night, and yet I couldn't stop consuming them. Like I was completely addicted to this shit. In my opinion, only a few creepypastas stood the test of time, one of them being 1999, and that's it. Like, that's the one that stuck with me. There are some other good ones, but that one is, like, really good, in my opinion. I mean, especially the video game ones were just the same formula repeated over and over again. Guy finds a cartridge on the flea market or in the trash, he throws it into his console that he played with in his childhood. Game seems normal at first, but then some glitchy stuff happens and a creepy picture jump scares the player.
Boo. So when Scrabbl mentioned to me that he wanted to do a childhood trauma video and he wanted me to come talk about creepypastas, it caught my attention. See, creepypastas now, a lot of people like to rag on, especially people who have sort of grown out of it in the horror community. Because yeah, a lot of them, most of them, were pretty awful. Like, looking back on it now, the writing of things like Laughing Jack and Jeff the Killer are honestly painful to read. However, that doesn't change how you felt about him as a kid. Like, for example, when I was 9 years old reading Jeff the Killer or Laughing Jack, was I bothered by how goofy or nonsensical the plot was? No, because I just kept looking at that stupid face over and over. And for a lot of people, that's all creepypastas really had to be. They had to be a scary vase with kind of a vague backstory to make them seem realistic. However, that doesn't mean there aren't some exceptions. See, there were a few creepypastas I read as a kid that got to me not only because spooky scary face, but because the implications of what the words were telling me. And even if I didn't understand why then, I do now. One of those was No End House, which was about somebody traveling through a haunted attraction to receive $500 if they can make it all the way through. However, every room they go into progressively gets worse and worse until the twist at the end of the story is revealed. They get all the way back to their house and it turns out they're still inside of the house. The idea being it's literally a no-end house. This looping forever purgatory, I remember, stuck with me and still stuck to me with this day, because there wasn't some jump scare, there wasn't some creepy twisted face. It was the concept of being trapped in a cycle that continues forever and ever and there's no way out of it, and that stuck with me, and it still does. Another one was 1999, which was sort of like Candle Cove, which was a bit more famous, of a young kid watching a TV show and not really understanding what they're seeing. However, where Candle Cove was more of your sort of stereotypical, oh, it's some creepy cursed imagery that's being shown to children, 1999 was just a guy in a bear costume who had kids who looked like they were being kept against their will. I remember being like a little guy and reading that story and thinking, wow, this could really happen. And now that I'm older and understand the implications of things like that, it's like, oh no, this could really happen. It doesn't need to be some huge, far out there supernatural telling. It can just be a very grounded, realistic story, but just because it shows up on the internet as a sort of campfire legend, it's known as a creepypasta. With none is it more true than what is still, in my opinion, the scariest creepypasta I ever read, Baraska. I'm going to spoil it right now, so if you're interested, ask to read it for yourself or listen to it. It is pretty long, but I think it's worth your time. Essentially, the plot is a group of kids are in a small town in, I believe it was Washington. At night, they hear far out in the hillside this sort of moaning scream. The legends among the kids is that it's a creature they refer to as the Skinned Man. And for a long time, that's the dynamic. The kids are afraid of this creature in the woods. They hide from it at night, until one of them goes missing. Specifically, it was a girl who went missing, and that matters in a minute. So all of her friends began to tell the parents that the Skinned Man took her, and all of the parents just kind of pushed the kids off and said she'll turn up eventually. Years pass, and eventually the kids decide to do something about it and go on a hunt for the Skinned Man. Again, I'm about to spoil the story, and I'm going to be careful because I don't want my boy Scrabbl to get demonetized. But what they discover is that there is no Skinned Man. There never has been a Skinned Man. Instead, the adults in the town have been capturing young girls to use, and whenever the girls have served their purpose, they are put in what is essentially a giant wood chipper. And the noise the wood chipper makes is the screaming that they've heard from their town for the past dozen years. That story destroyed me. I'll admit I was probably not ready for those concepts that I was reading about at the time. However, I remember it even today as being not only a well-written story, but such a horrifying tale. Because for one, it's completely grounded, and because you're reading it from the point of view of a creepypasta, you kind of expect it to be some skinned man, raggedy creature in the woods, but the actual result is way more terrifying. All of these kids' parents were in on it, even the parents of the daughter who was kidnapped. It's like the little kid horror movie concept of the adults are out to get you times 100. And I think it highlights a point that a lot of people overlook with creepypastas. Yes, the majority of them were bad and not worth the time it takes to type out the words on screen into these abominations of stories, but some of them hit the nail just right and did exactly what they were supposed to. See, I remember when I first got into creepypastas, I can't remember which YouTuber it was, but someone had made an introduction to them and they explained that creepypastas are essentially internet campfire stories. And sometimes with stories like No End House, Baraska, or 1999, that's exactly what it is. It's a story to keep you up at night, to tell your friends, and to be a little bit more weary of the woods at dark. So yeah, while it's fun to talk about how bad they can be, I think it's also important that we talk about how great they can be too, and how great of an influence they can have on us. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Thank you, Scrabbl, for letting me be a part of your video. This was Wendigoon. I've never done a collab before, so yeah, bye.
I hate this channel.
I'm still surprised how much scary shit and inappropriate jokes they could put into this series, especially in the earlier seasons. There's a bunch of scary material in SpongeBob, but the one scene that haunted me as a kid was the Nosferatu scene. I don't have to explain the scene, you probably know already what I'm talking about. It's a very iconic scene, but for the Patricks in the audience, I'm going to summarize it anyway. Get it? Cause Patrick's living under a rock? Anyway, SpongeBob and Squidward are doing night shift in the Krusty Krab and a bunch of spooky shit happens, like flickering lights and the phone ringing randomly, and Squidward is like, and then they both freak out when they see the silhouette of some spooky looking guy. Turns out that the guy responsible for all this is just a dude with very big nostrils. Well, he was responsible for some of the spooky stuff, but the lights was actually Nosferatu. Nosferatu. This scene came so random, I wasn't expecting this at all. And while I can see why they scared me as a kid, now I think it's just perfect random comedy. That just hits my sense of humor perfectly. But wait, there's more. That one episode where SpongeBob and Patrick are chilling with a caterpillar, and the next day it metamorphosed into a butterfly, and then they see it up close and it's like... This absolutely terrifying close-up of a butterfly with the fucking buzzing in the background. My god! And then Finally, the outro. Most of the time I watch SpongeBob on free TV where they cut out the outro. But whenever I watch my SpongeBob DVD, I got to see the outro. And I don't know why, but I always felt uncomfortable while watching it. It's something about the music, although it's actually a nice happy song in the eyes of an adult. Maybe it's that repetitive rhythm guitar that just keeps playing the same thing over and over. It's nothing that quote-unquote scared me, but it always gave off an eerie vibe. And now I found out that I'm not the only one who felt that way. Apparently there are tons of people who found the outro to be weird as kids. I can't really explain it, it's something that you have to experience to understand it. Everyone who played the Valve game before knows what I'm talking about. The first time I launched Team Fortress 2 on my old laptop, I got greeted by this lovely logo. It's just weird, it made me really uncomfortable, and that Half-Life sound in the background was contributing to its eeriness. I don't know, I always felt that there was a story behind this picture, and I always wanted to know why that guy has a valve attached to the back of his head. Also, I always had my audio really loud by default, so whenever I started a Valve game, the audio was so fucking loud, it scared the shit out of me. But as with all things, I got over it, and it stopped affecting me for a while. But then came Half-Life Alyx. I can confirm that the logo is way more terrible in virtual reality than on a flat screen. Not only that it's way bigger in comparison to yourself, but they decided to animate the guy so that he turns his head around and just before you can see his face, the animation stops. I really hope that he never turns around, this is already bad enough. Okay, I'm telling you right now, I'm not an anime guy. I used to watch Pokemon as a kid and that's it. That's how far my knowledge of anime goes. Of anime TV shows, that is. You know, I loved the Pokemon games and I collected the cards, so that was the reason why I started watching the anime in the first place. If it weren't for those factors, I would have never watched it. Because I actually hated the anime art style as a kid. So it comes even more as a surprise that I voluntarily watched an anime movie that wasn't about Pokemon. Spirited Away. Well, technically, I only watched it because I was bored and there was nothing else on TV, but whatever. How is this a kids movie? This art style is a lot more realistic than the cartoons I was used to, so off to a bad start. Not only that, but this movie had some terrifying scenes. There was that one scene in the beginning where the girl's parents start eating like crazy and then they suddenly transform into pigs? I remember having nightmares because of that scene. Then there was that monster thing with the mask who fucking ate a guy. This thing should not be in a kids movie. But anyway, I don't remember anything from the movie. I have no idea what it's about. I only remember those two scenes that scarred me for life. Majora's Mask is one of my all-time favorite video games. It's so different from any other Zelda game, it's just so dark. No wonder I was scared by it as a kid. There are so many dark messages in the game. You only have 3 days to save Termina from the falling of the moon. In that time you meet the different inhabitants, you learn about their personalities, their dreams, their fears. And if you don't do anything, they all just burn to death. All these characters gone, and then you travel back in time to do it all again. This is truly a dark way of saying that all things come to an end. Everybody has to die eventually. Time is ticking away. If you don't utilize that time to do something with your life, you're going to regret it. Death is coming closer every day. Truly some dark messages that are buried under the gameplay. But that didn't freak me out. The moon did. Yeah, the moon. I mean, come on. Why does it have to have a face? On top of that, such a terrifying expression. There were some instances where I used the first-person camera to look around and I accidentally pointed the camera at the sky. And there was the moon who jump-scared the shit out of me. Especially on the third day when it was really close. Well anyway, there also was this weird Link statue, you know, the one from Bent Round. And when I first played Majora's Mask, I already knew about Bent Rounds, but I didn't know that the statue was in the game. I always thought it was created for the Creepypasta. So that didn't help. And then at the end of the game, there's that part where you go into the moon, and inside the moon there's this seemingly never-ending field with a single tree in the center. While this is in theory a quite peaceful scenery, the fact that it was inside that terrifying moon just made it really weird. And the absence of music also just makes it a lot eerier. Things start to get very specific to my personal experience. I was scared of the flushing of the toilet at night. I don't exactly know why. Maybe it's because it is such a loud noise and it's interrupting the silence of the night. I don't know. This led to me doing something that I call the toilet race. Basically, whenever I flushed the toilet at night, I would wash my hands as fast as possible and get out of the bathroom before the flushing ends. Why? I have no idea. I just did it. Later on, I overworked my tactic to just not flushing at all, which, quite frankly, is pretty disgusting. Now this is a fear I had when I was super young. My mother had a peace lily plant and she put it in the hallway just before my room. Now this may sound very stupid, because it is, but this plant scared me. Yeah. My mom mentioned one time that these plants are poisonous. What she meant is you shouldn't eat them, but I thought it was poisonous on touch. So I just had no context. I thought this plant would kill me if I touched it. Not only that, but also every time I passed the plant, I held my breath and I refused to look at it, because maybe it could blind me, you never know. I was pretty dumb. This one is very interesting. So I used to watch a lot of TV as a kid. One night they were running a TV special where they showed some weird and funny commercials that aired throughout the years. I'm not sure, I think that's what it was. I don't know why you would voluntarily watch commercials, but I did watch it. The channel I'm talking about is called Super RTL. It's a German TV channel. Also, stop asking me if I'm German. I'm not German, for God's sake. If the place I'm coming from is so important to you, you should have taken a quick look at my channel. The answer has been under your nose this entire time. Anyway, on that TV special they showed a commercial with a snowman. I only have vague memories of the actual content of the commercial. I only remember being freaked out by it. I might be wrong, but I think it was a drink commercial. And there was this snowman in a forest, I think, who drank this beverage and then melted and died. I don't actually know if he drank it, I only remember the snowman melting, so yeah. I tried to find the commercial, but sadly without any success. If any one of you guys knows what I'm talking about, or someone wants to take it upon themselves to look for this commercial, please let me know, I really want to find this. The reason why I listed the Flying Dutchman as a separate fear is because I wasn't actually scared of the character in the show. What I was actually scared about was a reoccurring character in my dreams who looked like the Flying Dutchman and was called the King of Dreams. This guy was basically controlling my dreams as a kid. Whenever I did something stupid in my dreams, like for example jumping from a high building, he opened a black hole that sucked me in. This black hole was basically a long dark tunnel with flashing lights in which I was bouncing around. And when I reached the end of the tunnel, I waked up. That experience of falling through that black hole was terrifying. The King of Dreams punished me for doing dumb stuff by sending me through this black hole and throwing me out of the dream. And this didn't only happen once or twice, this was a reoccurring event. Until one dream where something happened, something very weird, and this basically got me interested in dreams and how they work. But I'm not going to tell you what happened because I want to do a video about dreams and my experience with them. So stay tuned for that. And that's it. That's the end of the video. Thank you so much to Wendigoon for first of all challenging me to do this video, but also for working with me. I really enjoyed working with him. His channel is in the description. You should absolutely subscribe to him. He recently hit 100,000 subscribers, which is absolutely deserved. Congratulations, I'm very happy for you. And yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, follow my socials and all that good stuff. Okay, bye.
Take me to your Xbox to play Fortnite today. You can take me Moisty Mire, but not Loot Lake.